So you think you know the Death Valley Cave story? Two doctors find giants, can't relocate them. Mystery solved, right? Well, not so fast. This exact discovery happened to 4 different groups across 2 decades. These underground cities connect to Hopi legends about sky beings who taught survival underground. Death Valley isn't just one mystery. It's evidence of an advanced civilization that ancient cultures knew by different names, such as the Anunnaki. I'm Carol Ann. Welcome to the InBetween. So, per usual, life is never simple. I started with a story about a cave system under Death Valley and ended up with a labyrinth of facts and legends that rival the cave system itself. So let's start at the top, where most people might be familiar, and work our way deeper into this crazy rabbit hole. Death Valley, much like the present-day Sahara Desert region, used to be green and lush, with lakes and springs everywhere. Not so much anymore. Now it's considered the hottest place on Earth, with several hot weather records under its belt. It got its now infamous reputation during the 1840s when people were flooding into California looking for their personal pot of gold. People usually followed the old Spanish Trail, which was a trade route from Santa Fe, New Mexico to Southern California and the LA area. But I guess some were either looking for a shorter route to Central California or a smoother ride than the established route, which skirted south of the Death Valley area. Several parties veered further north and found themselves in the belly of the hot beast. One such group was the Bennett Arcane Wagon Train Party. They saw the Panamint Mountain Range, thought it was the Sierra Nevadas, and headed that way. Not having the resources to make it all the way to the mountains, they were stuck in the sandy furnace for a month before being rescued. Only one person died, but it was a solid month of hell for everyone else. On their way out of the valley, one member of the wagon train looked back at the blistering wasteland and shouted, "Goodbye, Death Valley." And the name just stuck. Those of you regular perusers of the stranger parts of the world may recognize the tale of the Death Valley Caves. In 1931, 2 guys, Dr. F. Bruce Russell and Dr. Daniel S. Bovey, are roaming around Death Valley looking for anything of value. Dr. Bovey is an archaeologist with excavation experience at the cliff dwellings of New Mexico, but Dr. Russell is actually a retired physician from Cincinnati who moved out west for health reasons and decided to start a new prospecting hobby while he's there. While sinking a new shaft, he accidentally falls through the ceiling of a cave. Once the dust clears and he gets his bearings back, Russell discovers that he's sitting in an underground maze of tunnels. Bovey joins him, and together they explore a network of passages stretching in all directions. After hours of wandering around in pure fascination, they follow this one particular tunnel and stumble upon the mummified remains of 3 giants standing 8 to 9 feet tall, which Bovey dated to around 80,000 years ago. They're clothed in jackets and short pants from what looks to be grayish sheepskin. But it's not sheepskin, and they have no idea what animal it comes from. They find artifacts and hieroglyphs that resemble those of either Native Americans, Egyptians, Masons, or the lost continent of Atlantis, depending on who's telling the story. How would they know if the symbols were from Atlantis? They continue on and find another large room with perfectly preserved remains of several animals like tigers and elephants. By the time they're done, they count 32 tunnels spreading out at least 180 miles. So they're thinking, archaeologists are going to be all over this. Not so much. Mainstream archaeologists took one look at their claims and said, I don't think so. Russell and Bovey pretty much say,
Screw you guys. I'm going home.
And join up with a company called Amazing Explorations Incorporated, which is formed by investors to pay for them to go back to the caverns, which of course they can't find again. At this point, Bovey kind of fades away, but Russell keeps looking. And it's on one of these many expeditions to relocate the caves that he vanishes in the desert, with only his car with a blown-out radiator and his suitcase inside, the only things ever to be found. That is pretty much the popular version of this tale. The only reason we know about it is because a guy named Howard E. Hill recounted the story 16 years later while giving a presentation to the Los Angeles Transportation Club. That presentation was picked up and the story published in an article in the August 5th edition of the San Diego Union newspaper. But interestingly enough, if you read that article, it says a whole lot more than the popular version of the story. The article states that Russell did go back in 1947 and that the day before Hill gave the presentation, several well-preserved mummies were removed from the caverns, and that someone by the name of Dr. Viola V. Pettit, who had helped with the excavations around Petra in Jordan, would be inspecting those mummies. So where are the mummies? And what happened to Dr. Russell? The whole thing just kind of fades away into history. But believe it or not, this is not the only tale of caves under Death Valley. In 1932, so 1 year after Russell's initial discovery, a book called Death Valley Men by Bork Lee talks about two men, Jack and Bill, who fall into a tunnel near Wingate Pass. They walk 20 miles through this tunnel system that's illuminated by a greenish-yellow glow from lights powered by subterranean gases before they run into a treasure-filled tomb of mummified warriors with gold armbands and spears. They actually grab some stuff on their way out, but claim they are robbed when they get back to the surface. And just like Doctors Russell and Bovey, they can't find the entrance again either. They don't give up, but vanish on one of their trips into the Panamint mountain range to look for it. And even earlier than that, in the 1920s, a guy named White, who was prospecting that same Wingate Pass area, finds, you guessed it, a labyrinth of underground tunnels filled with hundreds of mummies dressed in leather, markings on the wall that look like Egyptian hieroglyphs, and treasure galore, all lit by greenish-yellow subterranean lights. When he finally makes his way to the other end, he finds himself halfway up a mountain overlooking Imperial Valley. He believed that mountain entrance used to be a dock, and that Imperial Valley used to be underwater. In one version of the story, White goes home, gets his wife and another prospector named Fred Thomason, and goes back again, but there's no record of what happened to them. In another version, White makes a deal with the Smithsonian, who takes everything inside and seals the entrance. But a Paiute trapper named Tom Wilson hears White's tale and believes it with every fiber of his being. Tom's grandfather used to tell tales to his family of an underground city lit by greenish-yellow lights that was the home of a race of fair-skinned people who spoke an unknown language that wore leather clothing. That started an obsession in Tom to find that city that lasted until he died in the late 1960s. And what's a good story without a good conspiracy? That Wingate Pass area where most of these discoveries are said to have taken place was gobbled up by the government in 1942 as a part of the China Lake Naval Weapons Center and made off limits to the public. Why am I not surprised? But that is not yet the end of our tunnel adventures. Right in the same time frame, 1934, a man named G. Warren Schufelt, a geophysical mining engineer, got permission from the county of Los Angeles to dig a mine shaft into what was then called Fort Moore Hill. The landscape of the area has changed quite a bit since then, but it's somewhere around the current Fort Moore Place between downtown LA and Dodger Stadium. He'd been working for months already with a device called a radio X-ray that he invented and had been using in other mining operations that can show him not only voids in the ground under him, but returns different signatures for different mineral deposits. Pretty handy for a mining engineer. So he'd been mapping out what he asserts was a maze of catacombs and rooms filled with gold. But he really doesn't understand what he's looking at until he's introduced to a Hopi Indian from Arizona named Little Chief Greenleaf, also known as L. Macklin, who tells him the Hopi legend of the lizard people. According to Little Chief Greenleaf, what Shufelt has found is one of 3 great underground cities dug by the lizard people after a great catastrophe 5,000 years ago, which they describe as a huge tongue of fire, which came out of the southwest, destroying all life in its path, with the path being several hundred miles wide. The lizard people decided, we're not doing that again, and built these 3 underground cities using some chemical process to create the tunnels instead of shovels. The city has lower tunnels that drain into the ocean, whose tidal changes force fresh air into the upper tunnels, providing ventilation. These complexes are so big that they can house thousands of families in underground apartment buildings, feeding them all with some kind of herb-based imperishable food supply.
Silent breed is people!
Making them self-sustaining for long periods of time. According to Shufelt, the tunnel system is shaped like a lizard, with the head located under Dodger Stadium and its tail somewhere under LA's Central Library, and a particularly large gold haul under the LA Times building, including 37 gold tablets measuring 4 feet by 14 inches wide each. Between a sheepskin map provided by some of Shufelt's colleagues, supposedly hinting to the location of Spanish gold treasure located in roughly the same place, and Shufelt's proof that he had found the same thing, the LA Board of Commissioners gave Shufelt the okay to dig, with the stipulation that if anything is found, LA County gets
Huff!
Over the next couple of months, Shufelt dug his shaft down 250 feet, far from the 1,000 feet he thought would be necessary, but large boulders and water table issues became a serious issue. Eventually, LA County said enough and revoked Shufelt's permit. And Shufelt and his radio X-ray machine were pretty much never heard from again. But if you're thinking this is the end of our story, try again. This is where it gets juicy. Let's start with the first ever tale of there being caves under Death Valley, the Paiute legend of Shinoav, also known as Ghost Land or God's Land. The chief has lost his wife, and the grief is so great that he decides he's going on a quest to the land of the dead to get her back. He'd rather die trying to get her than live without her. That's so romantic. So he sets off, entering the underground caves that will take him there. He has to defeat all kinds of demons and beasts along the way, but he finally makes it to a bridge that crosses an endless chasm below. But again, he'd rather die than live without her, so he crosses the narrow bridge and enters a virtual paradise on the other side. He's met there by a Paiute maiden whom he tells of his reason for being there. The maiden takes the chief to an amphitheater filled with spirits of the dead, all dancing and rejoicing. She tells them, wait there, his wife will come, and when she does, he is to take her back over the bridge and away from the land of the dead. And most importantly, he is not to look back. It takes days and thousands of rejoicing spirits filing past him before he finally finds his wife. He takes her hand, and together they cross back over the narrow bridge on their way back home. But the chief just can't resist. He takes one little glance back, and when he looks forward again, his wife is gone. He continues his journey back to his people and never stops telling them of his experience in Shinoav. Now, the reptilian part of the Hopi legend seems to be a new addition, but an age-old tradition is of the ant people. The Hopi creation myth tells us that we are currently in the fourth age, with the previous three ages ending in major catastrophes, bringing mankind to the brink of extinction each time. When the cataclysm at the end of the third age happens, the Hopi are led by a weird cloud by day and a star by night until they run into Sutuknang, the sky god and leader of the sky people. He, in turn, hooks the Hopi up with the ant people, who teach the Hopi to be industrious, gather food in the summer for the coming winter, live in peace with each other, and obey the plan of creation. The Hopi call the ant people Anu-Sinam. Anu meaning ant and Sinam meaning people. But let's take it one step further. So the Hopi word for ant is Anu, and their word for friends is Naki. Say it with me, Anu-Naki. So here's the part where Grok tells me that I'm nuts. But if you take into consideration that the lizard people legend is a fairly new addition to Hopi tradition, is it possible that it's a mistranslation or something of the ant people legend? I, for one, think that's fairly reasonable, since the actual legend of a race of people living in underground tunnels is exactly the same. So, is it that much of a stretch to go from lizard people to ant people? To what some people believe the Anunnaki actually are, what we know today as the gray aliens? And considering that in the Hopi legend, they are led to the ant friends, the Anunnaki, by the sky god, is it so far-fetched to think that maybe there's a link to the Sumerian sky people, the other Anunnaki? Mind officially blown. So, is any of this real? Well, Howard Hill did give the presentation to the Los Angeles Transportation Club. And G. Warren Shufelt was a real mining engineer who got permission from LA County to dig a shaft in search of gold. Unlike some of our other topics, this one takes place not that long ago in the grand scheme of things, making at least the people involved verifiable with 20th century record keeping. But I have to admit, there is a lot of speculation here. I have no idea if a deal was actually made with the Smithsonian. They probably wouldn't tell us if they did. And I can't find any info about Dr. Viola V. Pettit, who was supposed to be the one examining the mummies, except that she was once a member of the Royal Asiatic Society of Great Britain and Ireland, which sounds like something an archaeologist might join. But that's all I can find. As far as the connection between the lizard people, the ant people, and the gray alien Anunnaki, that's all straight out of my head. But you gotta admit, the correlation is intriguing. And everything else is legend. For the most part, legends are legends because they can't be proven. However, there are more and more legends being proven to be real every day. Maybe the proof of gold under Death Valley is just one more tunnel cave-in away. Well. Feels like we just got one piece closer to solving the puzzle of human existence. Or not. I'm not even going to begin to presume I know the answers to life's biggest mysteries. I just call them as I see them. And believe it or not, this is not the only episode we have about ancient civilizations hidden in caves. If you want to continue cave diving, click right here. Be careful out there, and I will see you here again on the In-Between.